A great example of intuition was when I was living in Toronto, Canada, 3 or so years ago, and just one day in particular, I just was like, I can't live here anymore. I just know I'm not meant to live here anymore. And when I was asked, especially by family and friends, I never had a great answer other than I just know it's the right thing to do. I just know I have to go. It's this deep, deep, deep knowing that, in some ways logically I can't even explain. And I found things to help explain it, and obviously there was lots of logical reasons to move, but the true reason was it was a feeling beyond anything. It was a feeling of inner deep knowing that led me to pack up everything, put it in my car, and drive close to 4,000 kilometers west to where I live now. And that was a beautiful moment of intuition that I followed through on. And then here I am now, thanking myself for listening to that intuition. That's one of billions of examples. What would be one example that you would have, Lisa? Just because I find in story that can help people, I think, understand a bit more too, what it is.
Yeah, that's a great story. I appreciate that. I've had a lot of moments like that, but the one that's coming to mind is actually when I didn't listen to my intuition. And like you, it was a very big business turning point in my life. And I was in the process of, speaking of Canada, building three technical training facilities, and one of them was doing well. And I had an opportunity to grow it to another two simultaneously, by the way, in Toronto and in Vancouver at the same time. Now, I don't know, do the math.
Wow.
It's a 5.5, 6 hour flight and a few time zones. I remember thinking to myself, do I do this? Now, here's where it's interesting. What is intuition? What is not? I realized that my ego wanted it. But there was something inside of me that said, are you sure? That's a stretch. You are already stretched. And this was not the only company I was running. And I decided to move past whatever feeling I was feeling and whatever thoughts were coming up, because I thought if I could just muscle through it, it'll be fine. I've always had a lot of success, so everything would be fine. And that particular story is very potent in my reservoir of memory because it was one that I should have listened, because what followed was a just an amalgamy of problems and issues, and ultimately the business didn't make it because there was too much pressure being put on something that didn't have quite the foundation that it needed. And so I learned very quickly about how do I hone the skills of my intuition even more so that I get out of my way and I listen to my higher self and I trust without any doubt that I know that even if it doesn't make sense, I'm still riding that path.
That's beautiful. I love we're taking opposite approaches to explain the same thing, because it's like, what is it not is just as important as what is it. And with intuition, it's so true. The more you listen to it, the more you want to continue to listen to it, because it's like getting the insider stock trading information before the rest of the world. It's getting those cheat codes to that video game. It's getting the test answers before you do the test. In a way, it's kind of like, once you really start to understand how spot on your intuition always is, you really start to recognize that it's the most logical thing to do is to actually listen to it, even and especially when the intuition and the information that's coming in really doesn't make any sense, or especially at the time feels like the opposite of what logically should happen. And the more I've listened to that voice, and it's my own voice, it's not for myself personally, and some other people might have different intuitive hits, and we'll get into this episode a little bit more specifically of like what different forms of intuition there are. We can call them the clair senses in another form, and how everyone does perceive them a little differently. So that's another reminder for everyone is to, it's your journey. This life is very much your own individual perception. So you will receive intuition in a slightly, if not maybe very different way than what we're describing. Doesn't mean it's not true, and doesn't mean it's not intuition. But with what you're describing, Lisa, I can think of now millions of more times in my life when I didn't listen to that intuition, and it was about as equally good of a teacher, because we learn well from the times that are, if not better, actually, from the times that are extremely painful and challenging. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree. Those are moments where I will never forget. And we don't need to go on rinse and repeat there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But you brought up something that's really amazing. I mean, yes, we are all able to hear intuition very differently because we're all on our own journey, and I love that. But I think what is the commonality or the common thread that we all have is that it is when we quiet the mind, when we release the breath and ungrip our mind, and soften the breath and get into a quiet space. I think that is one of the best ways to begin practicing how to hone the skill, because it's a skill of learning how to tap into that intuition. And there is an undeniable trust. And like you said, it's not logical oftentimes, but what is logic, right? So when we are able to release that ego of, well, it should look a certain way, and actually perhaps our intuition is telling us to do something that we didn't already have in mind, but that trust is the way in which to really exercise the muscle of intuition.